All right, so as always, when doing the track guides, I'm always using the Thursday session as a static temperature thing. So December 4th, this is Watkins Glen. We're going to click on this, and then you can just click test drive with whatever car you're using. These are the static temperatures, so this is going to be the same for all track guides. All right, welcome to the track guide for the GR86 round Watkins Glen. This is round two. We're looking at the laps. I put in some laps just to try to figure things out. Then I came back in and felt that this was a nice, kind of good spot to go with. Obviously, with fresh tires, it's a little bit quicker. So um, as I found time, I just went with this one here. So we're going to do this one. It's a 208.152. I'll play it at full speed, and then we will slow down and talk about it in detail. So they go 208.1. Let's dive into it now here. So turn one, on a full pace quality lap, I'm going around the 200 board mark. So I want to stay as wide as possible here. You're gonna watch. Here's the 200 board. Watch my brake and accelerating off, hard on the brakes, almost 100%. Staying fairly wide for a while. Definitely past the 100 board. Starting to turn in. I don't know if there's a mark that you can kind of use, but it's kind of a feel as you're coming around here is kind of where I'm starting to turn in here. Down in third gear. I want to aim to try to get my right tires right in the groove here where this blue yellow is. That's kind of where the apex is. In this lap, I miss it slightly, but I kept the momentum up nicely, so I didn't lose too much time. But that's roughly this. So you got the last yellow here, blue, red, yellow. You want these blue, yellow, red kind of apex type thing. And then you just keep that momentum up as fast as possible and you go out nice and wide. You can get two left tires over the curb here. This is roughly about the limit of where you want that at 1x. Any further than that, you kind of get a 1x, but you can kind of hold it all the way out this way. And then we're coming up to the S's here. One thing to notice or to note is bump drafting. So obviously bump drafting with the GR86 is quite important. The problem with the S's is it's in a corner, but you are flat out the entire way. We are going to ban any bump drafting in the S's. So at any point after this curb here, I'm going to make this for all 4 videos. Anytime after this curb here, all the way until the DRS line at the exit of the S's, is prohibited to bump draft at all. So you can sit behind the car, you're going to have to lift off the throttle, or go for a move, whichever one, but is prohibited to do any bump drafting whatsoever in the S's. So uh, speaking of that, when you're coming out into the S's, you're coming from the curb, you want to try to maximize speed through here. So we're just going to go all the way to the right. Be aware if there's other classes coming. They might want to come down your inside here because this is a fairly fast section and the GR86 is kind of slow. So just be aware you might not be able to turn in all the way because there might be a flying GT4 up the inside or a BMW. So yeah, just be a little bit aware of that. But if you're all alone, come to the right here, touch this curb, straight line it over to the left, touch the next curb, and then straight line it over to the right for the next curve. Right here, DRS. This line right here, once you're past this line, bump drafting is allowed again. Just be aware that if you are bump drafted, just make sure you hit them in the middle and softly at first, and then you can push them. Obviously, if you cause an issue when bump drafting, the car who did the bump in is going to get the penalty. But most of you kind of know the right way of bump drafting. So again, it's prohibited up until this line, and then after that curb and going into the S's. So this is going to be the same for all 3 classes. Just be very aware of this. Coming to the bus stop. We are as wide as possible. We're looking at this 300 board. It's between the 300 and the 250. Obviously, if there's cars coming down your inside, you might want to lift quite a bit earlier. Let them go, and then because the GR86 can fly through this section. So if you let them go, let them get ahead of you, come back in front, and then you can fly through this corner without losing too much time. You've saved a bit of fuel coming into the corner. Really, you're not losing much time here, so that's great. So we're gonna go between the 300 and the 250. Very light, one quick downshift, very light throttle or brake in. So there's what, 30% here, nothing too extreme. Downshifts into 4th. As I'm getting to this curbs, I'm gonna get off the throttle or off the brakes and onto the throttle to get that nose up so that I don't bottom out on these curbs. Notice how much of the curb I'm taking here. I am all the way to the inside close to this wall, jumping over this thing at almost full speed. Like, I did not slow down very much. Jumping over it, using the throttle, a little bit of scrub, getting again really aggressive, cutting this curb, staying in 4th gear, trying to stay to the left as much as possible. I find that if you start going too wide here, it's too much of an effort to turn left, so your tires scrub a lot. You lose speed, and you also lose tire wear. So if you stay to the left here, you're just doing less steering motion. So you're doing less tire scrub, and you're preserving your tires a little bit more. Again here, right over the curb, 4th gear. When you're on the exit, again, right over the curb, still in 4th gear. You're going to come out halfway across the track, still 4th gear. Then you want to do a nice little lift going into this one. Again, watch this. There's no real brake in here. There's just a lift. Again, coming out of the bus stop, chances are the cars won't get to your inside, but just got to be aware of that before you turn in. I don't think they'll have enough speed coming out of the bus stop on a GR86 to go anywhere. If they do, they'll probably take the outside, but just be aware they could potentially take the inside. And if you wanted to avoid that, coming out of these S's, you could just stay to the right. You won't lose that much time. This is a quality type lap, but if you wanted to avoid anybody from going to your inside, coming off this curb, you can just stay right here. That way, everybody's going to be forced to go around the left-hand side of you. That'd be a smart way to play it if you're in traffic, because you want to protect that inside. That way, you don't have any crazy somebody coming down your inside. If they're on the outside, they have to monitor that themselves. That's their problem. Obviously, if they're on the outside, they'll give them some room, but coming in here, yeah, just lifting off the throttle. Here I got on the throttle a little bit too early. You can see here, I'm on throttle here. I would have preferred to probably get on throttle a little bit closer to where this start arcing more. It's kind of not straight, but it's like not that much here. I would have preferred to start getting on throttle right about here. Uh, but I got on it a little bit too early and it pushed me a little bit wide. You can see here I had to, right there. Usually when I get on throttle, I don't want to get back off of it again. Whereas I'm okay with maintaining throttle, but this spot where I got on throttle, maintain, and then I had to get out of it. That right there tells me I did it wrong. So I got on throttle a little bit too early on that one. Ideally, like I said, around that arc where that starts to, where you can kind of see the pavement here. I'll try to get on throttle more around this area to get a better. Um, there's a little bit more camber down here on the corner, so if it'll hug you better to the inside. So just be aware of your throttle input on this corner specifically. Again, no braking needed, but a little bit later on throttle would have helped me a little bit better. Coming out of here, again, if you got cars on your outside, you're gonna have to give them some room. You can see here, because I got on throttle a little bit too early, I'm washing out quite a bit. Still good. You can still do a 0x here. You can see I'm all the way to the side of the track here, and then I come back on. So if there's cars on your outside, obviously give them room. You don't want to go that wide. Coming up to the next corner, New Watkins has this little grate here. I'm braking maybe a car or two lengths before it. Braking fairly hard on this, but I want to turn in early as much as possible because there's a lot more camber on the inside of this corner. So if you brake and you try to do like a late apex type thing, there's less camber here, so you kind of wash out and it's harder to get in there. So I like to turn in early for this one. So there's a grate. I'm off throttle fairly hard on the brakes, like 80, 90%, and then slowly coming off. You can see I'm coming in really early down to this curbing, still trail braking, and then back on throttle. I'll just progressively get up and then put it all the way up. Trying to get as close to this curbing as possible and out as wide as possible over the curbing again. Touching the curbing here, coming to the inside, aiming towards the 200. So again, GR86, you can go pretty late on the brakes, so I'm halfway between the 200 and the 100. Obviously, if you got cars on your inside here trying to pass you, you're going to want to lift off a little bit earlier. I always recommend lifting off as early as possible as you need if you got a big group of cars coming. Because I always like to try to gain momentum on the exit with the GR86. I find that's where you will lose the most. If you go too wide in here and you can't get on the power early enough, you'll lose to another car behind you that got on power earlier. So lift off nice and early. If you need to, here on a quality simulator kind of lap, I'm pretty close to the 100, halfway between. Hard on the brakes. Again, this is one of those corners where I like kind of turning in earlier, just like the last corner. I don't like really going out wide because I find there's less grip out here. I tend to stick to the inside a lot more. So down, you can do this in third. It's a little bit slower on the exit, but you gain time on entry. With this one, I'm trying to gain time on exit a little bit more. So I'm going down to second gear all the way. You can listen to it. Let me back it up. So third, second right here. And I immediately, as soon as I go down to second gear, I'm getting back on power because I don't want second gear to the engine decompression to slow me down too much. So I do get down to second gear, but I immediately get back on power and I get to the inside of the track, trying to get to the curb as much as possible and back on throttle all the way out of here. A little bit of touching onto the curbing, and then it'll push me out wide here. There's like a small little strip of pavement on the exit you can use to your advantage, and then off you go. Next corner, you're going to see there's this kind of a pattern with the GR86. Is a lot of times you're looking at this 200 board. So turn one, bus stop is kind of halfway between 3 and 2, and then yeah, there's quite a few times it's between the 2 and 3 or just after the 2 type thing. So this one here, we're going to be going a little bit closer to the 100. I think it'll be halfway kind of between. So yeah, about halfway. Again, hard on the brakes. I'm going down to second gear for this one here. So I get hard on the brakes and then I immediately start trailing off a little bit, all the way down to pretty close to the apex. You can see I'm getting on throttle a little bit before the apex. Second gear, as soon as I get there, I'm going to touch this curb a little bit, get it to skip and hop, get a little bit more rotation out of the rear. New Watkins, you can't really go over this anymore. There's a 1X here, so I stay to the track on the inside, and then I immediately start aiming towards this cabin, the WeatherTech sign, because I want to open up this next corner. There's no real good brake marker here, so it depends on what your FOV is like. I'm kind of using this at peripheral side, so there's kind of an opening here where there's no tree trunks, and then when I see the tree trunks here kind of go out of my first screen into my second screen, that's kind of a decent spot to apply the brakes. Go down to second gear for this one. So you can see here the tree trunks right there, they're out of my screen, and I'm starting to get on the brakes already, lifting off the throttle. Immediately down to second gear. It's quick on the brakes because you use the brakes hard for the uphill portion, but as the hill starts cresting over, I want to get off the brakes fairly quick, and then get back on the throttle to get to the inside here. So hard on the brakes. As I'm coming up and turning, as soon as I get over this crest, I want to let off those brakes and then coast a little bit and then back on throttle, second gear, getting as much rotation as possible, over the curbing, out wide, all the way out wide. Next corner here is flat out. There's really not much to it, just stay out nice and wide and then turn in roughly between the 2 and the 100, but closer to the 100. Flat out, over the curb a little bit, and then come immediately over to the left here. You're going to look at this barrier. There's a lot of tires here, then there's just the metal. So you're kind of lifting and braking around this part. It's just a small lift and brake, just to scrub a little bit of speed and push the momentum to the front of the car, so you got a little bit of weight on the front, and then you're going to do fourth gear through it. You might want to do third depending on your skill levels. Fourth gear is definitely doable if you trail brake just enough without scrubbing too much, because if you get your rev range a little bit too low, then you'll want to go into third gear. But at the spot that I did it, I was fine with fourth. So again, coming over here to the left, we're looking at this tire barrier here. Boop. Okay, off. Very light braking, immediately turning in, and then coast, and then back on throttle, get over this curb, and go as wide as possible without touching the wall. All the way to the left here. And then off we go. So 208.1. We're going to do a slower lap as well for the GR86, because I always like to show you guys the difference between a fuel save and a flat out one. So we'll go with a 210.05. I think it was almost 2.5 seconds slower. But you'll see why, because I do the same lines, but there's a huge lift. So where I was braking before, after this 200, 400, I'm lifting already. Big lift. Now I'm getting on the brakes. Here I get much better. Because I've lifted and coasted a lot, the car settles down quite a bit. And then I can kind of aim for this corner much better. Here I get this much better. I get right on the inside of this curb without getting on the outside of the curb. That pushes you back left. So that gives me a much better exit here. Minder, no pushing beyond this point right here. All the way up. It's still prohibited, and here's the DRS. Now it's prohibited. Or no, now it's allowed. So again, big lift into this one here. Normally I was braking just after the 300. That was the 500 mark. Big lift. Carry as much speed as possible through here. You can notice that I get on the power much later this time. Remember I mentioned this spot here. Now I get back on the power, so I can stick this one a lot better. I don't wash out as much on this one. Much better. Here I'm still coming to the same point, but you'll see my steering, like, I was not steering as hard to try to stay on track. Again, I was braking near this grate. Big lift. So I'm lifting about 50 meters or so earlier. Get on the brakes. To the inside. Here I was braking near the 100. Now we're after 300. Still down to second gear. This one here was closer to the 100, like maybe 125-ish. Here we're going to see over the 200, probably 225, so 100 meters earlier. Here I don't think you need to lift too much, but I do lift a little bit. This is all flat out. And then here I was lifting and braking around this point. Let's see where I go here. Yeah, way beforehand. So let's listen to it. So I'm going to play this one full speed, and you can hear it. It's way slower, 2.5 seconds slower. There's big lifts. But what I wanted you guys to see is where you can lift. If somebody's like trying to go down the inside of you, passing, you can do that on almost every single corner and save a bunch of fuel, but it is pretty slow. But you can pick maybe one or two of the corners along the lap and lift and coast there. So if you're struggling with a specific corner, for example, if you're struggling with number one, lift earlier for that corner specifically to try to stabilize the car a little bit better so you can get in there instead of pushing hard under the brakes, getting into it. You'll save a little bit of fuel, you'll stabilize the car, and you'll get a better exit out of the corner. Same with anybody's overtaking you, you can try to lift at those specific corners. But if you're not struggling with the other corners, push those ones full hard and then only use this lift and coast on the corners that you potentially might make more mistakes in. Be aware, I think there might be rain coming, or a small percentage of rain, so you might want to do a little bit of rain practice, but I don't think it's a huge percentage. I'll have to check again. But we'll play this lap full speed with the big lift and coast. So that's the lap. You can see there's a lot of lift and coast to this one. It's a very easy lap to kind of do. You do lose quite a bit of time, 2.5 seconds, but that just goes to show you that um, there's good spots to lift and coast that will help stabilize the car or let other cars pass. One thing I do want to mention as well is this pit entry. So pit entry, if you're going to come into the pits, you need to show it early. This corner is apexed below this yellow line here. So what I expect from all cars, including yourselves, is be aware if there's a car going into the pits. Obviously, you cannot come down to the apex, right? If there's a car on your inside here, you can't just come down on it. So I'm going to be asking all cars, if you guys are going to the pits, you guys are going to enter the pits from this line here. So if you guys are planning to go to the pits, stay to the right, show your intent, and you must enter on this line here. So you got to have two left tires on the right side of this line, showing that you're coming into the pits. And obviously, I don't want you guys to overshoot it. So make sure you carry the appropriate speed and you stay to the left or to the right of this yellow line here. I think if there's two tires slightly over, uh, that's not a huge deal, but I want you to remain to the right completely so that you guys can enter the pits safely and the other cars around you can know where you're supposed to be type thing. So that's it for the track guide for the GR86. Actually, that's a lie. I'm going to go with the fastest lap and do the far chase as I usually do. So you guys can see kind of where the line from the upside is. So we're going to play this one full speed. I'll kind of mention things here and there, but that's about it. So you can see here I missed this one by a foot. Remember here I get on throttle slightly too early and I end up pushing a little too wide. And there you go. That's the track guide for GR86 round 2 at Watkins Glen.